the process to become a GWO training provider. And again, this is the meat and potatoes of the conversation. I'm going to move through this. Really, this is a dipping your toe in the swimming pool of becoming a GWO training provider, but I'm trying to lay a foundation of understanding. So as your organization is looking into this process, you'll have some tools that you can use, some background that you can have as far as starting into that. So first place to start is documents. You go to the GWO website, maybe it feels like shopping at IKEA where there's a lot of stuff to look at and a little overwhelming, but there's a few places I just want to encourage you to start. First off is the little drop-down menu up in the top right. There's a lot of really helpful resources in there. There's a help center that has various articles on, a lot of frequently asked questions that we have coming up. There's a link in there to contact GWO at our info@globalwindsafety.org. You can send any sort of question into that. Some of those get sent over to me. A lot of them are handled by our operations team. There's just a lot of ways to get help just through that simple email. And then there's also a login to the Winda system in case you need to create a profile or get in to look at your training records. Moving from right to left, you see the requirements for certification bodies up there. Now, a lot of training providers don't tend to look at that because they say, hey, I'm not a certification body, but I actually do recommend if you're going through the process to become a training provider to spend a little time looking at the requirements for certification bodies because it's going to give you an indication of what the certification bodies are looking for. There's also a document in there that's the template that the auditors use when they're doing the certification at your facility. So essentially, the questions that they're going to ask you. You can fill one of those out, kind of have your game plan ready. But what's also really helpful in there is there's a table in there that the auditors use to figure out the duration of the audit. It tells them, on initial audit, you have this many days to do a management systems audit and this many hours per module that they complete. So you get a pretty good idea of kind of what the certification process is going to look like by reading that document. The one that we're going to talk about a lot today is the requirements for training providers. You click on that tab and it'll take you into that section of the website. You download the document. You can read it right there on our website. There's some Q&A stuff in there as well. That's essentially the guide that lists every single requirement the auditor is going to look at when they come to your facility to do your certification audit. And then the one all the way on the left is our training standards. Every one of the training standards is available on this site. You can download it, you can print the copies. It's very forthcoming with what's required. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail as we go through the elements of certification. Just kind of looking at, specifically the requirements for training providers, just as I described, you click on the top tab and then you got a couple tabs there. If you click on the second one that says requirements for training providers, right there is the document to download. It's currently version 11, and it's a very similar process to find every one of the other documents within the website. Now, when you start the process to become, to set up to be ready for GWO certification, there's 4 key elements that you have to be prepared for. Your physical resources, which is not only your facility, whether it's a mobile facility or a fixed facility, but all the equipment that you use for training. The management systems, the systems and processes and procedures that you have in place to ensure that you're delivering quality training. Your staff resources, how you do your instructor development, and then your training and assessment process. A lot of people go straight to D and focus on the curriculum that they're going to deliver, but all these other elements are extremely foundational to ensuring the quality of the training that's delivered and the consistency of the training that's delivered. And in fact, I'm going to start with item B, because this is really a foundational element, is the management systems. If your company's familiar with ISO certification, or if you've gone through some sort of education certification, it's very similar. It's really management systems. The easy way to break it down is you're saying what you do, and then you do what you say, and you prove that through some sort of mechanism, through documentation, etc. It requires a formally documented management system, ensuring quality, the safety training and assessment, and then compliance. And then it also requires that it's, basically not just your training department that's saying that you're doing this, and it includes your entire organization management. their commitment to implement the training standards. And then it's broken down into 3 sections, and I'm going to jump through each individually. The first one is organizational roles and responsibilities. Essentially, who does what, who's responsible. Is your senior management reviewing your training program for its effectiveness? Do you have internal audits set up? Who does those internal audits? Is it your quality team? Is it your safety department? And then how do you control documents within your organization to make sure that there's some sort of quality control process there? Next section is handling of training records. Do you have a system set up so that you can upload the training completion within the Windows system within 10 days? How do you retain the documentation in some sort of a learning management system? And how do you set the parameters for refresher training, for reminding people of their refresher training, et cetera? And then the other element is risk assessments, nonconformities and incident reportings. How do you go and evaluate your facility, your equipment, and make sure that you've identified the risks and the mitigation plans for that? How does your management review that? What do you do when something doesn't go well, whether that's an incident, a customer complaint, a technician attending the course has some pretty harsh feedback? How do you handle those kinds of nonconformities? Do you have a participant satisfaction system? And is it available for others to see how this course is being rated? And then finally, what do you do when incidents happen? How do you report those? How do you manage them? How do you draw, corrective actions, et cetera, et cetera? This is a lot of foundational stuff. And I find a lot of organizations have a lot of these elements in place. They just need to take the time to essentially line out and kind of map, if you will, where all of these things reside in their organization so they can, intelligently talk about them and be prepared to talk about them during the audit.